on, sir.
Yeah.
So, good evening. Welcome to all. This is base lecture series, online lecture number 28, and there are few uh, instructions. So, first of all, I would request to all the participants, to all the members, uh, turn off their video and audio also. I would also request to participant, please do not participate your screen. Do not share your screen. I would also like to request to participant, don't try to take any screenshot. It might create problems. And lastly, I'd request to participant, do not write hello, hi, good evening, etc. in the chat box. It 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 can draw our attention from the lecture. Okay, so with these few instruction, uh, I would like to call Professor Abdul Motin. He will introduce our speaker and as well as chair. Professor Abdul Motin,
Yeah,
it's over to you. Thank you.
thank you. Good evening, Jai Bhim, Hul Johar, Salam Alaikum. Uh, Indeed, it is very privilege for us that, as you all know, Bengali Academia for Social Empowerment Base have been organizing numerous lecture series on various themes and on aspects of democracy, on inequality, on migrants, on labor, on various philosophical aspects, as well as the issues which really need to discuss in the contemporary India. Today, we have a very important and very serious scholar, Dr. Chandraya Gopani, and all this session will be chaired by Dr. Minmoy Pramanik. Before introducing them, I'd just like to say a few words about the base. Base is an intellectual collective of conscious citizens of India. Uh, you know, thinking on the line of what long time back Mahatma Jyotirao Phule has said, Satyasodhak Samaj, the idea of Satyasodhak, truth-seeking society, and which is also reflected in our constitution's fundamental duties, which is the sense of inquiry and reform and promoting scientific temper. Base, believe in the constitutional democracy and radically believes in the idea of social justice. Uh, this is part of our lecture series program, and today the lecture number 28, and we have the title is theorizing the concept of Bahujan, and the speaker will put light on this subject, on this issue. Just I would like to say, generally the way we understand Bahujan in Indian politics, we stigmatize and stereotype Bahujan as only a category of, only a simple all of electoral political category. Well, of course, Bahujan is a very important political category. It's also equally important intellectual, academic category of academic inquiry. And what Manevar Kasiram, understanding of Bahujan, his understanding of Stooges, his writings on democratic assertions. These are the issues which today we will, our speaker will put light on. Uh, Let me introduce Dr. Chandraya Gopani. Dr. Chandraya, we affectionately call Chandraya Anna. We met at University of Hyderabad, and he is to be, and still he is a source of inspirations for many of young, students of social science discipline. I know that his rigorous understanding on caste, the issues of critical social science theory, issues on movement. Presently, Dr. Chandraya is assistant professor at GB Pant Institute, Social Science Institute at Allahabad. This is an institute affiliated to University of Allahabad, and he has done his MA, MPhil, and PhD from the Department of Political Science at University of Hyderabad, our alma mater, where both the speaker as well as chair from that university. And his The thesis of his PhD title is Dalit Movement in Undivided Andhra Pradesh and Study of Identity and Autonomy. And he has also wrote an excellent, book on in Telugu. It's Samanyam Rajdha, Rajya Dharam. Is basically in social equality. Is on social equality, and he has written many chapters in different books on in the category of new Dalit movement, from Ambedkarite perspective. And he's also I have read his one of his writing on atrocities. It's an excellent theorizing understanding of atrocities. And he has widely traveled in different parts of the world, including UC and Dublin at Ireland, Amherst in United States, Belfort in Germany, and of course he has traveled all across Indian universities and delivered multiple numerous lectures and published many academic as well as scholarships on movement and scholarships on social justice. His research area largely includes critical theory, caste, Dalit studies, intellectual traditions, and one of the important things I would like to say personally, the way he critically analyze the issues of caste, issues of class and gender from a regional perspective, that added an extra flavor to his academic discourse. With these few words, now I would like to, we have this session will be chaired by Dr. Minmoy Pramanik, and we also affectionately call Minmoy Da. Right now, he is he's assistant professor and as well as head of the department at the Department of Comparative Indian Language and Literature at University of Calcutta. And Mrinmoy Da has done his PhD, MPhil from University of Hyderabad at the Department of Comparative Literature and the Translation Studies. He has done his MA from University of Calcutta, and he also written widely on various themes on especially his area of research areas: comparative Indian literature, translation studies, world literature, and Dalit literature and migration studies. I mean, I'm not limiting his area of research, but it's absolutely fascinating. He has recently translated a very important book on basically in Dalit Nandan Tattva, the translation of Dalit Sahitya ka Swadharma Shastra by Saran Kumar. So he has been undertaken multiple research activities, and he has also traveled widely across different university of the world, including University of Helsinki and Dhaka, in Lisbon in Portugal, Monash campus in Italy, and of course British Library in London. So with these few words, without wasting much time, I would like to invite Minmoy Da to start the proceedings. Thank you.
Uh, Good evening, friends, and thank you very much, Matin, for your such and beautiful introduction about base, about Chandraya Anna, and yeah, we all are brother from University of Hyderabad, all old friends. So it is really pleasure to listen Chandraya Anna, and we all are waiting for that lecture. But before going to hand over it to Chandraya Anna, I would like to share few words that how basis contribution of organizing such lectures, and especially Chandraya Anna's today's lecture, will be helpful to all of us who are listening to him and attending this session, because you know that Dalit as a literary category, as I am from literature background, I am much more interested to see caste, Dalit, Bahujan, and the minority issues from as a literary category. Dalit as a literary category is not was not much known and much discussed in the context of West Bengal literary phenomena. Though there were several initiatives, and Dalit literature of Bengal is 100 years old, but unfortunately, Bahujan, as Martin mentioned, that it is a very significant political category and literary and intellectual category also. But in case of Bengal, Bahujan as a literary category is almost invisible, because we are trying to borrow different discursive language and theoretical understanding from different Indian languages. Bahujan movement and the Bahujan literary and political discourses from Telugu, from Marathi, from Hindi, from different literatures. We are trying to translate it. So our literary translation of these Dalit and Bahujan discursive text and discursive languages is also contribution to our political participation also. But definitely today we will learn more in detail from Chandraya Anna, and I believe all the researchers and the interested persons will be highly benefited, including me, because I am also working in this area from literary perspective. The caste situation in West Bengal is quite different from other part of India in this sense, because the entire caste discourse in independent India, entire caste discourse in Bengali formed under the context of, from the context of partition. So when you can find the significant literary text produced by the Dalit writers, the Bahujan writers, and the Dalit and Bahujan literary magazines, it is under the context of partition. So in that sense, the political dynamics of Bengali Dalit and Bahujan literature is quite different than any other part of India. But the problem is that what Bengali Dalit and Bahujan authors face since last 50-60 years, it is about the theoretical framework to establish Dalit and Bahujan arguments. That is why extensively Dalit literature from Marathi, Telugu, from Hindi were translated into Bengali. So the such kind of platform like BASE, where we all are together here to share our views and listen to the speaker coming from social science and humanities, such dialogues should be encouraged more and more to fill the gap of our philosophical and discursive understanding. That is why, especially in the context of Bengal, I understand the people from social science and people from humanities working on caste should come together and work together and exchange their dialogues and ideas. I will not take much time. Directly now, I want to go to Dr. Chandraya Gopani, Chandraya Anna. I welcome him in this session, and I request him to start his lecture. Chandraya Anna. Your mic is unmute, I think. Mute, I think. Anna. Unmute it.
Is it okay now? Can you?
Yeah, it is okay.
My voice is clear?
Yeah, it is
okay,
clear.
That's great. Okay, so good evening to everyone. I'm thankful to Abdul Martin and the BASE team who were kind enough to invite me to deliver a lecture on this platform. I'm very happy to share some of the views with you, and also I'm very thankful to the BASE team, and especially Abdul. I hope given the commitment, intellectual and activist commitment of this BASE team, I hope definitely there is a great impact through this group. It's with its intellectual engagement. Bengal is known for different intellectual traditions, and even subaltern group majorly comes from the Bengal. So one could see the trend within the social science. There is what Parthachareddy was written in Blue. There is a decline of subaltern studies, but I hope this group is nothing but an emergence of real subalterns in Bengal. So it will carry a spirit of great intellectual engagement and commitment to the social change. I would like to clarify certain things before begin I lecture. Though this title, Abdul informed me 15-20 days back, because nowadays I'm running a lecture series on anti-caste Shudra intellectual traditions on Satyashodak platform. So I was a little bit busy. I could not written paper. I could not have a very systematic, thorough paper. But however, given this importance of this theme, I have some rough ideas I would like to share with you. The title, if you see, the theorizing the concept of boson. When Abdul asked me, Anna, you have to speak on this platform, whichever theme you would like to speak. Then, so I have done my PhD on Dalit movement. I also working on violence, caste violence, intellectual traditions, and literature, and so on and so forth. But however, I thought there is a need of engaging with the very concept of boson and its theorization process and so on. So then I thought, though there is a very less discussion, particularly in Bengal, on the very category of Dalit, and particularly even on boson concept, but there is a need of engaging, understanding these categories which are very important in anti-caste thinking. Let me begin my own. I will begin with my own experiences from the campus life where I studied. I did my PhD from University of Hyderabad. Almost I spent 10 years there. I also started along with our friends, Bojan friend, on this platform. We used to organize SC, ST, and religious minority students and educate them. I will try to draw some of the examples from my own experience and some of the observations from my readings and field work and so on. To talk about theorizing the concept of boson, we have to begin with the understanding the caste. There are different ways in which you understand the Indian society. Some can begin with the class and related concepts. Some can start with the very gender, concept of gender. Some can start with the subaltern. Some can start with Hindu. There are different vantage points through which you enter to understand the Indian society. My own feeling is, I think caste is one of the very important category through which you how to understand the Indian society, along with class and other categories. But caste is a very, very foundational category through which you try to understand the entire Indian society, politics, everyday social relations. Then when we talk about caste, though there are many studies, there are many theories, I would go by the particularly anti-caste traditions, and I try to draw many observations from the anti-caste traditions and their legacies. If you read the Ambedkar, caste basically, though there are many changes throughout Indian history, how caste produced, how caste operates, and some of the characters of caste become very important. One, it is a graded inequality. Second, it is the endogamy structure where women become very important and women's enslavement. The third, the third is legitimacy of the Shastras in justifying the inequalities, hierarchies, untouchability, and so on and so forth. And also, caste is a relational, because when it is a graded, it is also a relational. So you can only make sense a lower caste with the upper caste. You can't make sense any caste can't be independent. So you are lower to somebody, you are higher to somebody. So it is a relational. So therefore, it is structure is very, very interconnected. So communities, their relations are very hierarchical and relational. Thereby, we have to understand their everyday relations. In India, so now if you ask people, do you believe in caste? People will say, no, I don't believe. In Bengal, people will say more, we don't believe, actually we don't practice caste. So because there are stories that you can keep listening. But however, studies in social science, I think clearly established how caste operates. I give some of the 3-4 examples, then I will go to the second part of my lecture. I think to deny caste, how it operates, there are many examples. Caste affected our every aspect of our relationship, from food to dress, music, festivals, any aspect you take in our life, caste affected. So therefore, you have to see caste dimension in every aspect of our life. I give some examples because now there is a big discussion around the because when I was in University of Hyderabad, there was a huge discussion around the food, beef festivals, and there is a because what you would like to eat is not allowed in the modern institutions. There is a big opposition, not only in University of Hyderabad, in JNU, not only in JNU, it was in CSSS also, there was a big opposition. However, there was some sort of struggle and all that. What I'm trying to bring to your attention is how within the institutions, caste is reproduced. Not only in society, in modern institutions also caste is produced. In English and Foreign Languages University in 2002, around 2002, there was a big discussion around music. Because there was a function that university organized a function with the classical music, where generally, and there is a tendency of the government institution, they start with the Bharatanatyam, or they start with the classical music. They have started with the Veena music. And suddenly Delhi students raised their hand and began to ask, how do you start? Why do you want to start with the Veena music all the time? Why can't you choose other instruments? And against it, people were offended and they have begun to ask questions. How dare you to ask that this is very classical music, this is our culture. So this is how we conduct the programs. Look at a music traditionally meant, enjoyed and performed by the 1 or 2% of the people become a national. A music which is nowhere related to the majority of the population are imposed to listen and made them to consider this is their culture. So all it is in the name of classical music, all in the name of national culture, Indian culture. So the caste is reproduced. I also bring to your attention in across India, campuses, outside the campuses, celebrating festivals. If you see the Narakasura or Mahishasura festivals also, you don't even there is a big opposition. What I am trying to bring to your attention is caste is reproduced in every aspect. Only thing is you have to realize what forms it takes. What is the process in which it operates? And also in the private sector, given the globalization, I think Thorat edited book Blocked by Caste and Grammar of the Caste, Ashwini Deshpande, and other numerous studies also clearly establish how caste operate and produced in private sector. So globalization also may not help us in addressing the caste question. So given this caste phenomena, I don't want to go into more details. There are many anti-caste movements throughout Indian history. In Bengal itself, if you see the legacy of the Harichand Thakur, Guruchand Thakur, even Jogendranath Mandal, even Machua movement, so whole Namashudra movement, and if you see the Kerala, Ayyankali, Narayana Guru, if you see the Tamil Nadu, Periyar, Maharashtra, Mahatma Jyotirao Phule, Ambedkar, if you come to the Punjab, Manguram, if you come to the Uttar Pradesh, Achyutanand, so you have many anti-caste movements throughout Indian history. So there are, when these movements are articulated, begin to mobilize the Dalits and other marginalized group against caste discrimination, violence, they have also employed different identities. So I would like to bring to your attention that in anti-caste movements, there are different identities that are invoked against the caste structures in order to mobilize. Take for example, one of the best example is Namasudra identity in Bengal, and Adi Andhra identity, and then Adi Hindu identity. So Adi Karnataka identity. So there are different identities that become important categories formed to them to mobilize, organize, fight against the Brahminical traditions and caste structures, exclusion and discrimination. And throughout India, during colonial period, before colonial period, and after colonial period, after independence also. But however, my focus is to focus on Dalit and Bahujan, around those categories. That's where I would like to spend more time, and other issues we can discuss in question answer sessions. So given these all identities, during mid of the 70s, Dalit Panther movement in Maharashtra become very, very important. This is the moment basically inspired by some of the communist movements and Ambedkarite movements, those who have already worked in RPI or other than RPI, they have begun to question the very structures of inequalities in Maharashtra. With Dalit Panther movement, Dalit Panther fundamentally questioned the political systems that were excluding the Dalits, the literature that was denying space to the Dalits, the dominant understanding of the nationalism, Marxism, and so on and so forth. So in a way, Dalit Panther movement radically reoriented the Ambedkarite thinking, and they began to fight against the caste violence. That was the period, if you read the Gale writings, and that was the period where young, particularly Dalits and Mahas, revolted against the system. And particularly, the biggest contribution of the Dalit Panther movement is in literature. In literature, if you read the Poison Bread edited anthology, you will definitely come across how robust it is in articulating the experience, the aesthetics, and the alternative values of the Dalit life, and which are fundamentally negated the Brahminical notion of literature, aesthetics, moral values, and so on and so forth. In that way, it contributed and reoriented the public discourse, and that is influenced the entire, and at least in some of the states. So what was the definition of the Dalits in Dalit Panther manifesto? Dalit Panther manifesto defined Dalit in a broader sense. If you read the Dalit Panther manifesto, you will come across Dalits who are socially discriminated, economically exploited, politically marginalized, the all oppressed groups, including even women. So that was the broader definition where Dalit Panther was trying to articulate the very idea of Dalit. So it was not limited to the only untouchable. It was expanding the all oppressed under the caste, religious oppressed structures, including even women. But however, this definition of Dalit in a later phase, this definition of Dalit also reflected in the movements in Karnataka, Dalit Sangarshana Samiti, in movements in Andhra Pradesh, Dalit Mahasabha. I think Dalit Mahasabha is one of the very important movement in Andhra Pradesh, which was
Sir, unmute your unmute.
Unmute.
which inspired. Am I clear?
Yeah.
Am I
Now
clear?
you are clear. Yeah, now you are audible.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the Dalit Panther definition of Dalit is also reflected in Dalit Mahasabha movement in Andhra Pradesh, in Telugu region. In a broader definition, this is also reflected in Dalit Sangarshana Samiti in Karnataka. I think more or less during beginning of the 80s, Dalit Panther influence was there across India. The broader definition of Dalits who are oppressed, suppressed because of the caste system, religious and Brahminical hegemony, where they try to accommodate even SC, BC, even other marginalized groups, STs, and so on. But however, over a period of time, Dalit category, if you read the Gopal Guru articles, I think Politics of Naming, which is an article published in Seminar, and also if you read his article, The Language of Dalit Bahujan, chapter published in Sage, edited book, Gopal Guru broadly tried to articulate Dalit in that broader sense. But however, one has to see what is its how it is practically functioning. Given this understanding, there is a popular understanding. But however, I bring to your attention from the Telugu experience. Until mid of the 1995, there was a popular understanding of Dalit means all oppressed under caste and religious and Brahminical hegemony, SC, ST, OBC, and religious minorities. But somehow they began to somehow they began to articulate that as Dalit means scheduled caste. Dalit, broken people, oppressed, crushed. It is really reflect the Dalit life. Therefore, the Dalits have begun to assert more and more this Dalit category. I think most of the academic writings, in activist writings, and particularly in
Sir,
Uh,
unmute your.
Anna, you are again mute, unmute it.
in North India, then in Karnataka, even the Telugu region and Tamil Nadu, that somehow both in activist circle, in academic circle, the Dalits are somehow reduced to the scheduled caste. However, some of the people may define in a broader sense, but Dalit somehow become to understood that Dalits means scheduled caste and former untouchables. In 1997, this was the period in Telugu region, there was a big debate on class and caste. And this was the period, this was also a period in mid of the 1985, BSP became very, entered into a national politics, which began to influence many activists and activists and writers and intellectuals and so on. This is the time Bausan concept became very popular and people began to use. And this is the time when Kancha Ilaya published a book in 1997, Why I Am Not a Hindu. This is the, I think, in my understanding, this is the first book which articulated a category called Dalit Bahujan. I'm just saying, I'm trying to bring to your attention. We have already a category called Dalit. Then we have already a category called Bahujan with the Kanchiram notion of SC, ST, OBC and religious minorities. And now, and in academics, with the Kancha Ilaya, Why I'm Not a Hindu book, where he began to use the Dalit and Bahujan category. So now I think this is where I would like to emphasize more and more. I read Kancha Ilaya definition of the Dalit Bahujan from his Why I'm Not a Hindu book. I'm reading. From 1984 onwards, the concept of Bahujan began to become popular with the emergence of the Bahujan Samaj Party. Kanchiram, the national president of the BSP, began to use the term Bahujan to refer to the SC, ST and OBC. He also expressed the view that one should not use the term Dalit as it separate SCs from STs and OBCs. The concept of Bahujan simply means majority. It is in this sense that the term was first used by Buddha and then by Pule. The problem is that it does not point to what the nature of that majority population is. To resolve the problem, I have decided to use the term Dalit Bahujans to refer to SC and OBCs. One may also, as Kanchiram does, include the ST in it, but I have not discussed STs in this book, as strictly speaking, they do not figure in the caste system. In Kancha Ilaya, as I said, began to use Dalit Bahujan. Referring, Dalit means scheduled caste, Bahujan means OBCs. As I said, I also read how Gopal Guru defines the, understand the Dalit and Bahujan concept. For your kind attention, I read the paragraph. Just I want to try to bring to your attention when we are using some categories, how popular academicians are also used and influenced the entire our discussion. Gopal Guru, in his article, he writes, the category of Dalit can't be accommodated within the majority-minority divide or the Bahujan Mahajan category, dichotomy. It does not perceive people as numerical entities to be manipulated by the Dalit Bahujan power brokers or poll pundits, because this category does not exist ready-made either for statistical jugglery or for electoral arithmetic. It has to be discursively constituted and negotiated with other vibrant and sensitive categories across social and ideological spaces. Thus, the category of Dalit has the potential to undermine, rather dialectically, the pragmatic political politics of opportunist forces, both within the Dalit community and outside it. Moreover, its aim is to invoke radical politics which has normative concerns and envisions positive utopia. I read two important paragraphs from two important academicians who are influenced, who become a representative voice of the Dalits, OBCs, and all. Here, I also introduced how Kanchiram understood the concept of Bahujan. Now, there is a need of having a discussion. See, for Gopal Guru, Dalit is basically, in this para, as for the para we will go, Dalit means an assertive, positive identity which is a product of the movement, This is the identity owned, constructed by the untouchables, which is a product of the movement. So it is a radical identity which gives an alternative imagination for liberative politics. Simultaneously, he critiqued that Bahujan or Dalit Bahujan categories are the categories of product of politics. They do not, they just go by the minority and majority logic. Therefore, they only seek power politics rather than analytically enable us to understand the social reality. So he used the words like power brokers, poll pundits, and so on and so forth. This is a understanding on Dalit. I also read Kanchailaya understanding of Dalit Bahujan, why he is using. So in Gopal Guru understanding of Dalits, it is practically, actually, does not even include the practically. Now one can define Dalit means the SC, ST, OBC, religious minorities, but in practice, how people understand, articulate that reality is very important. And now if you see some of the movements across India, movements by the most marginalized, if you take the Arundhatiyas from the Tamil Nadu, monks from the Maharashtra, Madigas from the Telugu region, even Valmikis from the North India, their movements and their questions really interrogate the homogeneity of the Dalit. That doesn't mean that Dalit category does not have a caliber to propose the alternative politics or value framework. So I am here trying to bring to your attention that within the Dalit, the diversity is not much understood. It's supposed to be understood within the Ambedkarite framework. And that doesn't reflect in the very definition of the Dalit. Now, and moreover, OBCs and other oppressed groups actually does not figure in that framework of Dalit category. When it comes to the Ailaya, in his paragraph itself, he is writing in 1997-98. That was the period when there was a big debate. This text comes from the Telugu region. I would say that in Telugu region, there was a big debate around caste, gender, class. There was a big churning. And that was also a period in Telugu region, BSP entered in a much more vibrant way. So there was a simultaneously Dalit word was used and Bahujan word was used. Some people are also began to use Dalit Bahujan. But Ailaya, when he's produced this important text, because his contribution in anti-caste thinking is enormous, and there is a need to learn many things. But when it comes to conceptualization, and there is many people express some sort of discomfort, particularly with this term. Today is very important for our discussion. That's where I am trying to begin. In Ailaya's understanding of the Dalit Bahujan, Dalit means scheduled caste, Bahujan means OBCs. And in his Dalit Bahujan, minorities and STs do not figure. So this goes the very idea, spirit that was proposed by the Kanchiram. I am trying to bring to your attention how Dalit category identity is understood by the Kanchiram and his entire 20 to 30 years, 40 years of mobilization does not reflect in the very definition. Now, I think I try to bring to your attention what are the problems and limitations and what are the difficulties to understand. Now, I would like to bring to your attention, given this different understanding perspectives, I'm trying to bring to your attention and trying to propose that there is, after 40 years of Bahujan movement in India, whether we like it or not, whether we are part of it or not, but there is a great influence on Indian politics. Because some of the writings you can read on Kanchiram movement, Jawaharlal, Silent Revolution, and other documents, I can quote number of studies. My own understanding is the very idea of constructing Bahujan category is not merely a political category. Kanchiram, if you read the Chamcha Age, is editorials in oppressed India, I think his interviews, if you try to read his biography and so on, Kanchiram was conscious that he claimed that my idea of Bahujan rooted in the anti-caste intellectual tradition. So I am nowhere trying to bring from heaven or from the air. My proposition of the Bahujan rooted in the anti-caste philosophy. And he also began to explain that, look, anybody who would like to start the anti-caste movement need not to start with the zero. Because there is an entire legacy from the even Charvaka, Buddhist tradition to Bhakti traditions to during colonial period to now. So therefore, our conceptualization, our framework of thinking has to be rooted from within the anti-caste intellectual traditions. That's where Kanchiram began to refer, look, within the Satyashodak movement, Pule, Mahatma Jyotirao Pule and Savitribai Pule, 1860s, 70s and 80s in Satyashodak movement, they began to use the category called Shudra Ati Shudra. And today, if you want to refer scheduled caste and other backward caste. But during that time, 150 years back, they have a broader conception where they want to see two different worlds. And Sedji Budji. One side is trying to conceptualize Shudra, Ati Shudra. Other side, you see the Sedji and Budji. And also, he began to articulate and organize the all marginalized group through Satyashodak. If you see the Ambedkar articulation of these categories, he was experimenting with the many categories: depressed caste, Dalit Bandhu, and Bahishkrut Bharat. He was employing different kind of categories to accommodate the SC, ST, OBC and religious minorities. If in North India, if you see Chandrika Prasad Jignasu, who is also an anti-caste thinker from Uttar Pradesh, particularly, he used in 1960 itself Bahujan Kalyan publication. So they were employing this category in addressing and accommodating the SC, ST and religious, SC, ST, at least marginalized groups. So if you see the Harchak Sangh by the Ramswarup Verma, he was also talking of the exploited, earning communities. If you see the Jagdev Prasad from Bihar is using the Shoshit, so who are exploited. So what I'm trying to bring to your attention, in across India, many categories that they have experimented trying to address and accommodate the SC, ST and religious minorities. So therefore, when we talk about Bahujan concept, I think not merely in the logic of minority or majority. Bahujan means literally majority. Though Kanshiram was using, it appears that he is using a majority in terms of politically marginalized and excluded. He was actually referring the caste. I think that's where we have to understand a majority population, a majority of the communities which are victims of the caste. The logic of number comes, it is a default, they are the majority population. But the point Kanshiram was referring is the caste structure. So therefore, the victims of caste. So that's where he was referring the scheduled caste are the worst victims of the caste. The Shudra, I think if you read his writings, Shudras, though they are part of this Varna structure, they were the people who are banned from the education, property, and power. I think this is, Kanshiram refers, these communities, SC, OBC, even STs, and even religious minorities, to some extent, particularly SC, STs, broadly, I understand that SC means constitutional terms, OBC means a constitutional term again. There are complexities, but still, Kanshiram was referring broadly victims of the caste. He is referring a structure that is excluded, marginalized for centuries. I think that's where is idea Boson rooted, which is also a concept which is already proposed and articulated and visualized from the anti-caste thinkers. This is one. And Kanshiram is also, when I am talking about the Kanshiram, I'm going beyond BSP, BSP, current BSP notion of whole Boson concept. So, trying to draw how Kanshiram was trying to conceptualize, though is not given very conceptual deeper sense, but he was referring caste structures. And when it comes to minorities, it is very clear now, whichever caste untouchables converted, whether it is Christianity, Sikh, or Islam, and other religions, and the caste become an important structure that exclude them in those religions also. That's where Dalit Christians and Pasmanda, Kushan, and Muzbis, Dalits become a very important questions. So that's where he was referring the caste within the Hindu fold and outside the Hindu fold also, other religions also. So majority of the understanding is majority of the converted the lower caste within the Christianity or in other religions are from the lower caste of the Dalits. Therefore, their suffering organically linked with the caste structures. So therefore, is addressing the caste victims of caste. So therefore, the Boson concept, we have to see beyond numerical strength. The numerical strength is by default, it comes. If you see any in terms of caste structure, so therefore this Boson concept with the Kanshiram effort also produced many simultaneous vocabularies. He began to construct a new vocabulary for our intellectual engagement. Not only a Boson, he began to articulate Boson Samaj, the formation of Boson Samaj, the articulation and building of the Bosonhood, and simultaneously is constructing the Manuvad. So, and Dvijas is trying to construct two different worlds which are antagonistic in its essence, not only in a political field, in everyday relationships. So that's where we have to see the concept of Boson going beyond a numerical strength. When you see the going beyond numerical strength concept of Boson, what becomes important is this constituting the Boson, SC, ST, and religious minorities. What is the essence that connect? One caste definitely connect. That doesn't mean that there are no class inequalities. Definitely class inequalities, even gender, regional patterns also reflect. But still, that operates broadly within the caste framework, within the caste structures. So therefore, this Boson going beyond the expanding the Dalit category. In fact, sometimes Kanshiram also used to say, don't don't use the Dalit language, try to focus on the Bahuzan. So this, by emphasizing, I think he was trying to focus and convince us that look, the majority of the population in this country are the caste victims, though there are some sort of class formations, but which works within the caste structures. Look, not only that, the second point is historically, majority of the anti-caste thinkers, through their organizations, through their effort, through their struggles, trying to unite these caste victims from the SC, other Shudra communities. And some people may say that STs essentially may not be part of the Hindu structures, but one has to understand, given this 100 years and the political influence, STs broadly, though there is a diversity, they are the victims of the Brahminical state governance. So they are the victims, and there is also a Hinduization process, and they are definitely now part of the victims of the Brahminical character of the Indian state. So therefore, one has to see that they're definitely directly, indirectly victims of the caste structures. So therefore, what I'm trying to bring to your attention is, one, the Bahuzan framework of thinking is see a human relationship around a production relationships rather than God-centric relationships. I think that's where it's very important. If you see the Periyar, Ambedkar, any anti-caste thinkers, they essentially trying to articulate human relationships around the production. So that's where they replace the God-centric interpretation of the human relationship. The second, they also focus, all the anti-caste thinkers focus, when they focus production as the center point for the human relationships, they also build knowledge not in the framework of Shastras. They also see the knowledge with reference to their experience, the everyday reality. So therefore, what I'm trying to bring to your attention is, they are the producers and the consumers of the knowledge in anti-caste intellectual traditions. Whereas in the Brahminical tradition, producers and consumers of knowledge is divided. Well, Brahminical forces are the producers of the knowledge, and the lower classes and caste are the consumers of the knowledge. I think in anti-caste thinking, this distinction is, if you see the whole anti-caste tradition, this distinction is erased. And the Bahuzan also, if you see the anti-caste thinkers again from the Shudra and Adishudra intellectual traditions, even from the Adivasi, you also see a critical understanding of Indian nationalism and colonialism. I think that's where Ambedkar, Periyar, and Phule understanding on Indian nationalism and colonial rule is very, very important for the perspective of the Bausen. And also many of the anti-caste thinkers, particularly Bausen thinkers, and emphasize and the democratic means to social transformation. That's where Kanchiram focus on Ambedkar focus on one man, one vote, one value. I think radically changed the Indian governance. That's where untouchables, Shudras, those who are denied the property, education, power, with the concept of one man, one vote, one value is replaced, and they become as citizens. The meaning of citizen only comes through the constitutional framework. And that's where I think Ambedkar's understanding of state constitution become very important. And that's where Kanchiram also takes a route carrying in proposing vote hamara, Raj tumhara, nahi chalega. That means this is organically emphasize that link, thereby mobilizing the all politically marginalized communities through Bausen concept. That's where people who are denied the power with the constitutional means are now regaining. So that's where I think we have to understand the whole Bausen concept, how it is linked with the constitution and the right to vote, and thereby replacing the power structures. And that's where democratizing the power relationship, both in our everyday relationship and in a political system, become very, very important. I think that's where Kanchiram also invite in the given caste structure, in one sense, even everybody is victim. The victimization is graded. I mean, it is a degree. Some are victimized more, some are medium. So there is a victimization and particularly even oppressors, the upper layer of the communities also through Ambedkar and Kanchiram and Phule, they in a way invite to the upper Brahminical communities to realize their oppressed structures, where they can have a more dialogic form in transforming the society. That's where Kanchiram, some of the politics you could we have to understand in that sense. However, lastly, there are external challenges and internal contradictions within this framework of understanding the concept of Bausen. To Bausen, as it proceed with the Bausenization, Kanchailaya would say Dalitization of the Shudra communities. But Dalitization of the Shudra communities is very complex and very vague. But I would say Bausenization of these caste victims. I mean, the Bausenization is socio-cultural process in which they invoke the Phule Ambedkar thinking in addressing the caste question, class question, even gender question, and thereby building the solidarities among these caste victims and challenging the Brahminical cultural ethos, thereby cultural practices and political practice. That's where Bausenization also invites us to interrogate our caste privilege and thereby listen the lowest of the low. I think this is very important. That's where the internal contradiction to the Bausen framework of thinking is this. Today, within the scheduled caste, there are diversities, and many castes within the Dalits are raging. Within the OBCs, there are lower OBCs, MBCs, and the nomadic communities within the OBCs. And there are within the OBCs, there are land-owning communities. Even within the minorities, there are Syrian Christians, there are Dalit Christians. Even within the Muslims, there are the Pasmanda Muslims, there are other Muslims. What I'm trying to bring to your attention is just invoking and articulating this Boson concept by just saying unity is important within the oppressed does not realize our potential. Rather, I think there should be a self-interrogation to the privileged communities within the Dalits, within the OBCs, within the minority communities, thereby building the solidarities. That's where the concept of fraternity, I think Ambedkar talks about the fraternity when it comes to Kanchiram, Bhaichara. I think extensively it built Bhaichara community concept throughout his movement. I think Kanchiram was the first. He was trying to identify the anti-caste thinkers in each state, going beyond Phule, Ambedkar, Periyar, Narayana Guru, Sahu Maharaj, which are known to us. But he was trying to identify local figures, anti-caste thinkers, in order to learn from their movements and have a dialogue with communities from where that thinker comes within the SC, ST and religious minorities. That's where he identified many anti-caste thinkers throughout India. As his idea of payback to society, his idea of bomb set also organically indicate that building solidarities. So therefore, the internal contradictions has to be realized simultaneously while there is a need to emphasize the unity, solidarity, and so on and so forth. I think one has to understand while there are two processes, one a cultural process where we have to challenge the Brahminical cultural ethos in every aspect of our relationships. There is also need of focusing the alternative political imaginations. So therefore, don't stick Boson concept only with the BSP. I think that is you try to think beyond BSP. Boson concept is very important. Show me a single category today after 40, 50 years of anti-caste movements within the Dalit discourse, within the OBC discourse, Adivasi discourse. Show me a single category which accommodate these all groups. I think our intellectual poverty is that we have not constructed so far any category which is really, other than Boson, within the political and academic circle. I think this is one of the very important category which enable us to see the alternative ways in which we can engage both intellectually and politically and challenge the dominant class, caste, patriarchal structures in visualizing the egalitarian society. I think I stop here. I took more time that you have given to me. I thank everyone. So though my ideas are very zigzag, I was trying to share some of these rough ideas. We can have in question answer sessions some more clarification. I thank everyone.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chandraya Gopani. And it was a really fantastic lecture and so structured. we were so moved to listen to you since last 1 hour and 5 minutes or so. Dr. Gopani talked about caste and different aspects of caste in our social and cultural life and the caste structure. He tried to look caste as paradigm to read the social and cultural history, and very significantly he mentioned that any aspect of our life is caste affected, and how caste is reintroduced and reproduced in the context of this neoliberal society and our national political context. He talked about Dalit intellectuals like Kancha Ilaiah and Kancha Ilaiah's very, very popular and significant categorization of Dalit Bahujan. He talks about Kashiram, his contribution to the Dalit political discourses and his contribution to electoral politics in India also. Dr. Gopani also talked about limitation of the caste movement, and he talked about the Bahujan structure of thinking. I think it was very thought-provoking lecture, and we have several questions in chat box. So may I go to the question answer session, Abdul? So can it start?
Yes, please. Yeah, please start.
Yeah. There is a question by Govinda Bhakta. His question is, how does the building up of Ram Mandir in UP influence on the Dalit society in future?
Yes, okay. Ram Mandir, of course, those who are religiously because there are people who are in the fold of BJP and RSS. They may get some sort of satisfaction not in terms of any material sense, but in terms of, since they are working and trying to see that there will be a temple, I think they may get some. But in broader sense, even if they get some sort of a spiritual satisfaction, definitely they will realize in nowhere it will give any meaningful sense to their life. In any sense, I think they will soon realize. Only its time is, I think we have to wait. I'm saying those in the fold of them. Those who are not in the fold, there are lakhs and crores of people. I think for them, it doesn't make any sense. Rather, they will see how power works. See, it's not all people are in the fold of the RSS or BJP. Any party. There are many crores of people outside these parties, organization. For them, it doesn't make any sense. Rather, they will realize how power works. What is the relationship between a religion and power? How organization can go beyond constitutional framework and utilize. I think that's where, for many Bhusan cadre, I think this is also opportunity to educate how power works. I think this is my immediate answer.
Good. Right. The next question is by Akriti Bhatia, and she asked, why are we not able to see an active Dalit movement today, be it against the anti-CAA protest, anti-worker, and other anti-people policies that are underway?
Okay, so one, why there is no protest against class inequality?
Active Dalit movement against this.
I think, yeah, I think, there are two questions. One, to what extent Dalits participated in anti-CAA? That is one question. I think there are Dalit groups across India, even visibly Chandrasekhar Azad, Bhim Army. Definitely they are participated, even if they have participated, but in solidarity with minorities, they are there. There may be they may not actually participated in protest, but definitely there is a need to participate more in solidarity, in protecting in general. It is a question of citizenship. So therefore, directly, indirectly, Dalits will be the victims once that comes. And the many nomadic peoples within the OBC, thousands of the nomadic communities are there within the OBCs. Hundreds of the nomadic communities that are there within the Dalits. I mean, they are going to be victims. So therefore, I think because the corona and again there are many issues came, but that moment stopped for a while. But there is a need, I think, working, coordinating towards that. And the second is, see, there is no one uniform Dalit movement. I think we have to realize that. There is nothing like one uniform Dalit movement in India. There are different Dalit movements. There are different Dalit movements in terms of youth articulating in universities, in terms of literary production. See, there are hundreds of literary production happening every month across India. Can you imagine? Don't you think that this is not part of the movement? Producing a text, one literary text by an author, first generation, educated person, itself is a big thing. Publishing it, making available to the public, itself is a big thing. So I could say in Telugu region, I think hundreds of the writers are coming. That itself is a qualitative change in terms of movement. They may not be in that. So what I'm trying to bring to attention is there are different movements. Some are visible, some are not. So why there is no active taking of some of the workers' rights? I'm telling, there is no active even working of the even communist within it. I'm trying to bring to your attention. So there is a need to take up some of the issues which are neglected. That doesn't mean that there are no active Dalit movements. This is my immediate response.
Thank you. The next question is by Hassan Dhawak, and Hassan's question is, Kancha Ilaiah has used the concept of Dalit Bahujan in pan-Indian context. Do not you think this is just generalization of Dalits? Don't you regional diversity and local context are ignored?
Yeah, so I think my first point is caste has to be seen both in all India national phenomena as well as regional phenomena. I think this in a regional context, class is less studied. So there are regional variations, because take for example Telugu region, Kamma Shudra community, Reddy Shudra community, Velamas Shudra community, Kapus Shudra community, but they are land-owning community, politically powerful. So Kapus, some of the Kapus comes under OBC. And that's where I'm just trying to bring in. Even OBC category is very diverse. Even if you use legally, it is very diverse. When we say OBC, which OBC? It is MBC, which is OBC nomads. So there is a diversity. But in essence, those diversities exist within the Dalits and within the OBCs. What I'm trying to Kancha Ilaiah Dalit Bahujan concept, though he contributed a lot, there is a need to learn, and his contributions continues to inspire. His conceptualization of Dalit Bahujan is misleading. That is my point. It is misleading precisely before Kancha Ilaiah. Bahujan is not a creation of the Kancha Ilaiah. Please try to understand. Dalit is not a creation of Ilaiah, Kancha Ilaiah. Both terms already exist. There is a big struggle to those categories. He employs this two categories without their original meanings. I think that's where it goes to the very spirit of the Kanchiram, goes against the very spirit of the Kanchiram, and it will be misleading conceptually. If you only, in one sense, ideal sense, that means numerically majority. When you say OBC, Bojan means OBC, numerically majority. I think in Kanchiram sense, that is not numerical. It is caste that become a very important. I think there is an entire anti-caste legacy.
Thank you. Thank you. And the next question is by Kripali, Hassan, and Alpana Kumari. Three of them have almost same question. That can you please refer some text for them written by Gopal Guru and Kashiram?
So Gopal Guru, because Gopal Guru is well known in academics within the public domain, he contributed a lot. His extensive writings in EPW you will find. The articles that was I referring today, one, Politics of Naming, published in Seminar. This article talks about different categories that are employed by the Dalit movements and Ambedkar and so on. One article, The Language of Dalit Bahujan. It's a chapter. It is also an article written along with the V-Gita, published in EPW. And this chapter, the Language of Dalit Bahujan, is a separate chapter written by Gopal Guru, published in Sage book, edited by Ghanshyam Shah. So there are other articles also, but these are the immediately I can respond. And what is that? Kanchiram, because Kanchiram writings, one is, there are two writings, important writings, apart from the interviews and lectures. One, Chemcha Age, the second is on bomb set. What is bomb set, how it works. These are two important. And he wrote many editorials in Oppressed India magazine. I think those editorials are available in book form. I think biography of Kanchiram also published by Penguin, Badri Narayan. Some of the writings.
Next question. So how many questions we can take, Abdul?
It's up to you, chair. We have another 15 to 20 minutes.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So we can have. Next question is by Suvi Rai. Thank you for this insightful discussion. As the speaker discussed how caste is produced in the institutions, what does the speaker meant by rise real subalterns in the beginning of the lecture? How the speaker understand the subaltern study introduced by the Indian Marxist, having no discussion on caste but just class. So there is two questions, I guess, real subaltern and the subaltern and caste.
Okay, that was in my beginning. I just in a passing mode I commented, but however, I am happy to share my thought. See, I have very little, I have read little the subaltern studies writings. So I am not, but my own sense is through Partha Chatterjee article after decline of the subaltern in APW, some of the writings. So broadly, though they have invoked Gramsci, began to particularly engage with the colonial period, archive and all that, it's largely in their practice or in their writings. Caste does not figure as a base of their framework, at least as a point of thinking. That's where, because when Adivasis, Dalits, women, when they are extensively writing and producing creatively, bringing many issues to the public domain today, how can you say the decline of subaltern? That's where I'm saying the real subalterns are writing. Please listen that. There is nothing like subaltern declared. You subaltern group as declared in engaging with the groups which are coming. And how can you say when the robust of the text and intellectual engagement is coming from the Adivasis and Dalits, other backward caste in the entire Bahujan communities, can't you think these are the real subalterns? In that framework, I'm saying there is an emergence of real subalterns, not merely consumers of the knowledge, producers of the knowledge. So I'm not able to listen.
Meanwhile, unmute yourself.
Yeah. Sorry. There is one interesting question by Murshid Alam, and he wants to know how does Indian Constitution define the minority? If we see India deeply, there is many minorities in respect to religion, culture, language, and so many. If that is the reality, where the idea of majority comes from?
I think he is also asking technical, what is the definition of constitution?
Exactly.
Frankly speaking, I don't know. I have not. I can't refer the exact definition of the minority. It's true. There is minorities of language, religious minorities. The diversity is there. And in my understanding, in my lecture, my presentation, I was referring with reference to caste. That is my reference point for the minorities. When I referred minorities, when Kanchiram also was referring, look, even though there is a conversion from the scheduled caste, even from the Shudra communities, lower Shudra communities, into Islam, Sikhism, Sikh religion, and Christianity, caste continue to become a problem to them. So therefore, minorities in religious sense are, of course, excluded from the political representation and so on and so forth. Apart from the religious minority sense, there is also a caste minorities within each religion. So that's where caste structure continue to minoritize, even though they are converted into other religions.
There is another question by Mahamadul, and Mahamadul wants to know, please enlighten us about gender oppression and discrimination within Dalit community. There is general conception that Dalit people use sex only for production, not for enjoyment, as Kancha Ilaiah wrote. Patriarchy also promotes same things. Don't you think Dalit patriarchy works in the way like any other patriarchy? How do you relate the chronic hunger of Dalit people that we can see in the Dalit autobiography with gender?
There is a debate for a long time on the Dalit patriarchy, particularly the exchange between Sharmila Rege and Gopal Guru. Now there is many scholars from the Dalit communities are really engaging. See, my first response is whether patriarchy is always there. The degree is different. The form is different. So any patriarchy that exists in whatever form, in whatever degree, within the Dalits, can't be a democratic patriarchy. Any patriarchy is undemocratic, whether within the Adivasis or within the Dalits, anywhere. So there can't be any democratic patriarchy. But however, in essence, Dalit communities were articulating that, look, while woman is sufferer within the caste structure, Dalit woman has a different world altogether compared to the Dalit, even Shudra community women, even Adivasi women have a different world, everyday world. Our labor, our imaginations, our everyday practices, family is entirely completely different. You can't impose the upper layer of theories that are constructed around their life. That's where when it comes to labor, our participation in the field is very important. An upper caste woman who is largely meant to the house, kitchen, a Adivasi woman, a Dalit woman, 20 maximum majority of the times in the field, there is nothing like kitchen and home in the Dalit life, in the Adivasi life. Crores of the people without kitchen, they have a home, only single room. Now, how do you impose a theory that you constructed around kitchen and impose and try to understand the Dalit woman life? This is the one of the essence point. I think people have to understand this. I think which is very much articulated through Dalit literary writing, which are very important. I would say that within the Bahujan communities, even Adivasi or Adivasi writings are slowly coming. Particularly, women writings are very less within the Adivasi communities. In general, very less, but women. Literary writings are in a sense contributing more insight for the social science analysis. That is one of the very important, because how come Dalit literature in many of the universities become very, very important subject for the discussion. It reorients our entire worldview. That's where there is a serious engagement with the Dalit literary world, particularly a literature from the Bahujan communities will definitely in coming days will radically shift our understanding of literature, aesthetics, literary frames and contents, and the genres and pedagogy of the literature and canons and so on and so forth.
It was such an engaging session that we can have question, answer, and discussion for hour after hour, but we cannot. So one last question, and after that I will leave the stage for the organizer. Last question is by Prabodh Singh, and his question is: in a rural economy, there are antagonistic class contradictions between land-owning dominant caste, including several OBCs, and Dalit landless laborers. Several caste atrocities on Dalits are committed by this dominant caste. In this backdrop, does not the concept of Bahujan itself seems to be reductionist in its theoretical conception, and even opportunist, ignoring land and labor issues and in favor of political gains of certain socially upward mobile and traditional elites?
First of all, land labor is very important for the not only Dalits but entire many communities, because while land, material, labor is not denied, rather it is differently understood by these communities. While it is true that there are land-owning communities within the OBCs, and many of the Dalits depend on them for their livelihood, for daily wage, I think we have to understand this class character within these Bahujan communities. I think that's where I give one example immediately. When there is a atrocity from the one OBC caste and Dalit, how do we understand within the Bahujan framework, let us say? Many of the people who think towards Bahujan concept, they will say that there should be unity between SCs, STs and OBCs. We should be very silent or ignore it. Many atrocity happens. That is not our goal. Our goal is the political, a broader unity and building solidarity. Therefore, when you talk about this atrocity, our solidarity will be disturbed. This is one way of understanding. But my own sense is, I think that will dilute the very idea of the Bausan framework of thinking. I think practically, in essence, if they are truly believe the Bausan and Pule Ambedkar thinking, they have to talk about that atrocity, whether it is done by the OBC or some other caste. But however, practically, we have to take up and talk that incident, but it is our intellectual and political commitment to identify which caste specifically, rather than generalizing the OBC. There are hundreds of the OBCs. Try to identify which caste, however small it is, however big it is, whether it is land owning or landless OBC, you identify that caste specifically and you try to say that there is a attack of this particular caste on Dalit, so that the victims, you can build solidarity and identify, specify that particular community rather than saying OBCs. I think I am trying to bring to your attention, so that our attention is to build the solidarities among the oppressed as much as possible. How do you do that? Only sidelining the specific community which attacked on OBC, rather than generalizing OBC attack on Dalits. That's where morally, politically, we have to commit it to the justice. And that's where our sustainability of the alternative framework of thinking will lies. Otherwise, it will be a very diluting thing, both for the intellectual and political commitment.
Thank you. I thought that the last question will be last, but this is really a last question. Going to have a last question. It is the question by Sheikh Abid Hassan, and Abid's question is it time to see Bangladesh Liberation War and Dravidianism as Shudra assertion?
Okay, so I will. I don't know about Bangladesh Liberation War because I don't know much about. I'm not familiar, so I will not answer that. The second question I will try to answer. The Dravidian as a Shudra assertion. I think the entire non-Brahmin movement in Tamil Nadu has though. Because see, the non-Brahmin movements in Telugu region and Tamil Nadu, some of the groups, they were against the Brahminical hegemony, not exactly the caste. See, in the perspective of the annihilation of caste, one has to realize and interrogate his own caste privilege. In the caste structure, anyone who does not realize, interrogate his caste privilege can't be a part of annihilation of caste. The precondition for to be a part of annihilation of caste process is to interrogate your own caste privilege, thereby listening the lowest of the low. In Dravidian non-Brahmin movements, wherever it took place, it was just questioning the Brahmin hegemony in every field, and it was really not realized and interrogated their own caste privileges. That's where, if you take the Kama community in Telugu region, they fought, Vaishyas fought against the Brahmin hegemony in Madras presidency, but they become oppressors in the later phase. So that means annihilation of caste means interrogating your own caste privileges. That is the beginning point. That is not happened. That is not happening with some of the Dravidian parties and movements. And that's where there is a critique of Dalits on non-Brahmin and Dravidian movements in Tamil Nadu.
Thank you so much, and my sincere apology to those whose question I cannot take due to short of time. And thank you all for such an engagement in with this session. And thank you, Chandraya Anna, Dr. Chandraya Gopani. Now I leave this stage for the organizers. Yeah.
So with us, we have senior professor of Alia University, Professor Amjad Hossain. So I would request to Professor Amjad Hossain to say a few words. Sir, unmute yourself and say a few words.
Good evening, everybody. Can you listen to me, please?
Yes, yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, you are audible. You are
Yes.
audible.
It was such an interesting and insightful lecture. Really, I am interested in, I also often study Dalit literature and theorization of Dalit writings. So, although this is more of a social science kind of lecture from the perspective of social science, but indeed it is, for me at least, it is rewarding, because you see these social, political, intellectual ideas, theorizations regarding Bahujan, the concept of Bahujan, concept of Dalit, Dalit Bahujan, etc. This can give the critics also an insight into Dalit texts. So that way it is very, I mean, for me personally, it is very rewarding. That's why I thank Dr. Chandraya Gopani. Moreover, I think from the broader perspective, not just from the literary critics perspective, your presentation is much profitable, because we are thinking of, you see, bringing about a kind of solidarity of all Dalit groups, Bahujan groups, including the religious minorities. But you have particularly pointed out the external and internal contradictions of, I mean, contradictions that goes against any, any that goes against in the formation of any or achievement of this unity or solidarity. Because as you said, the process of, Bahujanization perhaps will precede, need to be precede before we can form solidarity between Dalit groups, OBCs, as well as SC, STs and minorities, religious minorities. So we have to focus on that, the process of, as you said, Bahujanization, before thinking of achieving this solidarity. And we have to focus more on that. I think on that note, for me at least, it's very much enlightening. So I profited very much. I think all the participants who were present today will be profited by your very, you see, interesting, very thoughtful, thought-provoking presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Amjad Hossain, sir. Now, Professor Nargis Ahmed, madam, will deliver the vote of thanks. Nargis, madam, it's over to you.
Thank you, Hassan Bhai. Assalamu alaikum and good evening to all of you present here. I must thank BASE for providing me the opportunity to deliver vote. On behalf of BASE, Bengali Academy for
Nargis,
Social
madam,
Empowerment, I
would
would
you
like
like,
to.
please off your video so that we can hear you clearly.
Yes, yes. Okay.
Okay, please.
So on behalf of BASE, Bengali Academia for Social Empowerment, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to our today's honorable speaker, Dr. Chandraya Gopani, Assistant Professor, University of Allahabad, on the topic theorizing concept of Bahujan so well. Thank you so much, sir, and for your wonderful, informative, and very important deliberation today. We are really glad to get our affectionate Dr. Chandra Anna today. So thank you so much, sir, for joining us. I would also like to extend our cordial appreciation to Dr. Mrinmay Pramanik from Department of Comparative Indian Language and Literature, University of Calcutta, to chair today's session so well. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. And it is really, we are so much delighted to get both of you here today in our base lecture series. And special thanks to Amjad sir, who is Senior Professor of Department of English as well as Dean of Student Affairs, Alia University, who joined with us today. Thank you, sir. I must thank BASE President, Vice President, GS, and all members, especially the technical team who are actively working for BASE lecture series happening successfully. So thank you all once again. Last but not the least, I am thankful to our wonderful audience who joined throughout and I think beyond the country also, and who constantly shown their interest in BASE lecture series. So thank you all once again. Let me introduce our tomorrow's online lecture series number 29. Topic is some important tips and strategies to crack NET set in life sciences. Speaker is Dr. Sheikh Mohammad Abu Imam Shadi, Assistant Professor, Department of Biological Sciences, Alia University, Kolkata, which will be happening from tomorrow, 11th August, 7 p.m. onwards. So thank you all for your patience hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Nargis, madam. So here I announce the end of session. Thank you very much. So
Thank you all and good night.
okay.
Thank you.
Uh, Professor, please unmute yourself and speak.
So thank you, Abdul and BASE team. It gave me a great opportunity to meet and share my views. Next time,
Thank you.
definitely we will be more constructive. And
Sure.
Abdul always inspire us in doing very rigorous things. So we'll keep in touch. Thank you.
Sure,
Thank you
Anna.
very much.
Take care.
Thank you.
See
Thank
you.
you. Thank
Good
you.
night.
Bye.
Jai Bhim.
Bye-bye.
Jai Bhim.